Okay, so let's get going. So we're going to be talking about 25 herbs that are simple to grow, and then 10 bonus herbs that are easily found in the wild, or you can grow them in your own backyard as well. Just to begin, this module is not intended to treat, diagnose, or cure any illness. It is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please consult a healthcare professional before treating yourself or others with herbs. Getting a diagnosis from a doctor before treatment is always a great idea, and herbs can and do interact with pharmaceutical drugs. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Aloe vera. You can see I have also the Latin name here for each herb, Aloe barbadensis, and I will include the Latin name for every herb that we go through. This is really important because we want to focus on those Latin names. That's where we're going to find that specific plant that we want, the one that has the most medicine. So aloe vera has the same properties, medicinal properties, as other succulents. For example, purslane, prickly pear cactus, and hens and chicks. They are osmotic herbs, and what that means is that they're going to help pull fluid out of wounds. And sometimes when we have burns, those burns really hurt, and that's because there's a lot of fluid in that area of the body, and that's what's causing us pain. So those osmotic herbs are going to pull that fluid out of the wound, and that's going to help with pain relief. But they also help to accelerate healing. They're called a vulnerary herb, or considered a vulnerary herb, which means that increases rapid cell reproduction and growth and healing that way. They can be taken internally for digestive inflammation and constipation, and they can be really strong, so you may want to stay home if you use them that way. It's really important that we grow our aloe, if we're in colder climates, in a pot and bring it in during the winter. If you're in a warm climate, then of course you can grow that outdoors. Okay, let's talk about our next herb, Angelica, Angelica archangelica. This plant is part of the carrot family, and it was used back in the medieval times. Saved a lot of lives back then. They coveted this plant and they used it a lot. It's part of a family, the carrot family, where it's a very vast family. There's lots of herbs that grow in this family, herbs that can be life-saving, like lomatium, which is a very strong antiviral. It's also part of the family that poison hemlock grows in, which one bite of that herb and that could kill you. So we need to be really careful where we go and harvest certain plants. If we're harvesting them in the wild, we need to make sure absolutely what those plants are before we use them. The seeds are a strong antispasmodic, which means it's going to help relax spasms in the body. And so it would be really good for diarrhea, especially for, kill you dead diarrhea. I'm told that it's better than Imodium AD. I haven't had to use it yet for that, but many herbalists tell me that it's very, very good for that. It's really great for helping one recover from a cold and flu. It's good decongestant and a diaphoretic, so it's going to help us sweat out a fever and help us get rid of all that mucus from a respiratory infection. The root helps to expel a retained placenta in a woman who maybe has just given birth and hasn't delivered all of her placenta. That would be life-saving. And it's really good used externally for joint and muscle pain, as well as hemorrhoids and spider veins and varicose veins. It has some astringent properties to help tighten and tone those tissues. Anything that affects the uterus, we want to avoid using during pregnancy, so we wouldn't use this one during pregnancy. Our next herb is basil. Osmium basilicum. It's an annual. It's part of the mint family. And all of our mints want to do something to the nervous system and the digestive system. They're really good at killing things. So they have a lot of antimicrobial properties to them. Basil is really good for digestive upset for gas and bloating and colic. It's good for headaches because it's calming to those nerves. Good for earaches, anxiety, depression, and stress. Makes a really great poultice for itchy bug bites and stings. And there are no contraindications here. The aerial parts are the parts that grow above the ground, and that is the medicine. All right, calendula officinalis. You may remember this from the last module. Calendula refers to the calendar. If we were in a warm enough climate, this flower would produce every single month of the year. And those flowers would go to seed and just drop and then produce new plants. So this would grow year round. I don't live in a warm enough climate, but it does produce a lot of the year for me. The flower is the medicine. We did talk about the importance of officinalis at the end of a Latin phrase and a name, which we know is to be considered medicinal. These plants have been around for a long time and have been used for hundreds of years as medicine. Calendula is a really great antibiotic, antiseptic, anti-inflammatory. It's really good antifungal, used for thrush and other yeast infections, good for diaper rashes, as a salve and a cream, and we're going to learn how to make a calendula salve and cream later on. It's a really good vulnerary herb, which means it's going to help accelerate wounds by increasing rapid cell division in the body. When it's used with cleavers, it helps to cleanse the lymphatic system. When it's used with comfrey, it helps to heal ulcers. There are no contraindications here, and the flower is the medicine. We want to pick them just as they are here in the picture, just as those flowers open up. As you pick them, you may notice that they're a little bit sticky, and that's actually the antifungal property to the medicine there. All right, moving on, catnip. Nepeta cataria is a perennial. This plant looks very similar to stinging nettle, which is another wonderful medicinal and nutritive herb. We'll get to that one later. Catnip is a really good carminative, meaning it helps with digestive upset like gas and colic. I like to put this one in colic formulas with fennel seed and chamomile. It's really calming to the digestive tract and really safe even for babies. It's a great sedative and helps to support sleep. It helps to calm anxious, high emotions. It's a good diaphoretic, so it's going to help us sweat out a fever and make that fever a little bit more productive and do a good job for us to help get rid of whatever's going on in our body. Again, there are no contraindications. The aerial parts of the plant are the medicine. Okay, cayenne capsicum annuum. This is a phenomenal herb. It's an annual, so you'll have to buy starts from your nursery or maybe start seeds under lights yourself. It's really great for low and high blood pressure because it makes our vessels elastic. So you can use it for both. It's really good for pain, surprisingly. It contains a chemical called substance P. And, you can use the dry powder on cuts or stings or things like that. It might sting a little bit at first, but that chemical is going to help deaden the nerves and help with pain relief. It's really good for stomach ulcers, surprisingly, because it helps to stimulate mucus production in the digestive tract. We would want to use the actual loose herb and maybe some water or tea or something like that, rather than take a pill. As much as that sounds more appealing, that pill won't do anything because it will be digested in the small intestines rather than in the stomach. So we need to get that medicine to where it needs to go. It helps to break up mucus in the respiratory system. The old eclectic word for cayenne or herbs that broke up mucus in the body is catarrh. So it was a catarrhal herb. It broke up that catarrh mucus in the body. It's excellent for shock and heart attack. The herbalist that I learned from, Dr. Patrick Jones, he's also a veterinarian, and he uses it all the time to save the lives of animals that have been hit by cars and they're in shock, and it brings them right back to where they need to be, and it's life-saving that way. This herb is fairly safe unless you have issues with the nightshade family, then you'll want to avoid it. The fruit, of course, is the medicine. All right, our next herb is chamomile, Matricaria recotita. This is the German variety here. The German variety is an annual. The Roman variety is perennial. It looks similar to feverfew, but the leaves are more fern-like, and it has a really nice apple-like smell, where feverfew smells a little more musty. It's much different. This is a wonderful anti-inflammatory and nervine herb. It's good for pain anywhere in the body because it calms the nerves. And so it would be good for digestion and other issues that cause us pain, digestive upset, or nerves that are inflamed in other places in the body. It's really good to use with catnip for colic and digestive upset, as well as stress and anxiety. It's a fabulous kidney restorative. It's one of those herbs, very few, I think nettle seed also is a kidney restorative, that helps to actually heal the kidneys. If you are allergic to maybe the daisy or the aster family, you might want to avoid chamomile, but the flower is the medicine. Okay, comfrey, Symphytum officinalis, or Symphytum uplandicum. Symphytum officinalis is another one of those official herbs that has been used for a really long time. Symphytum uplandicum is also comfrey, but it's the Russian variety, and that one is sterile. It's a mule, so it's not going to reseed and grow all over your yard. That might be a nice option if you don't want comfrey growing everywhere. It's a perennial, which means that it's going to keep coming back every single year. I've cut my comfrey back probably 3 times now this season, and we're just the beginning of July. And you just keep cutting back, it keeps growing, and I'll just use those leaves and dry them. The roots go down really deep, so if you were to gather up as much of the root as you possibly could, it would still come back. I heard that the roots can go down 15 feet. So comfrey is a really great, excellent vulnerary herb, which is going to help accelerate wound healing due to its really high levels of allantoin. That's the chemical that gets our body to rapidly increase that cell division. It contains a lot of mucilage, which is very soothing to tissues, and it's a good expectorant, so it would be really good for respiratory issues. It contains a chemical called pyrrolizidine alkaloids, and these alkaloids have been tested on 6-week-old rats as 40% of their diet. When they found lesions on the rat's liver, they decided that comfrey shouldn't be taken internally. However, I don't know of any herbalist that has had an issue with comfrey, because we don't eat comfrey. We don't use it as 40% of our diet. If you were to drink as an adult 3 cups of tea a day, you would be just fine. So, don't give comfrey to 6-week-old rats. Maybe don't give comfrey to pregnant women, and don't give comfrey to little babies or those people that have liver issues. If you really needed to take comfrey and you had some liver issues, I recommend taking milk thistle. Milk thistle is really a wonderful liver protective herb, and you could take milk thistle with that. Okay, So let's move on to Echinacea. Echinacea purpura or Echinacea angustifolia. This is also considered a coneflower. So any of our coneflowers like Rudbeckia or black-eyed Susans would fall underneath this category. The whole plant is the medicine. So the root, the leaf, the flowers, the seeds, everything can be used as medicine. It's a perennial. It's a really good antibiotic. It's a mild antiviral. It's antiseptic, so it's really great for cleaning wounds. And it's an immune stimulant. It's a fabulous anti-venom herb. It contains a chemical called hyaluronic acid. And this hyaluronic acid is the glue that holds all of our cells together. So if our cells were bricks, the hyaluronic acid would be the mortar in between those bricks. And, you know, why is it an anti-venom herb? Well, those pit vipers, you know, rattlesnakes, copperheads, water moccasins, hobo spiders, as well as brown recluse spiders, they all contain a chemical called hyaluronidase. And that hyaluronidase actually breaks down the hyaluronic acid because spiders drink their food and snakes really need a lot of help to digest their food. And so this hyaluronic acid, or the echinacea, helps the body to produce hyaluronic acid, as well as contains hyaluronic acid, which stops that venom from spreading in the body. So it's pretty amazing. Echinacea was considered snake oil back in the day, and it kind of, you know, anything that's called snake oil has a bad rap, but echinacea was legitimately a really good thing to have to stop the spreading of the venom from those animal bites. There are no contraindications unless you have autoimmune problems. Then you may want to avoid echinacea. You know, in that case, astragalus is a really nice herb to use instead of echinacea. Okay, so elder, Sambucus species are elderberry plants. Any of the species are wonderful to use. I don't recommend using any of the red varieties. There's a red variety that grows, and its berries are a little bit more toxic and can make one sick. So stick with the elders that produce blue and purple berries. It's a perennial. It's a really strong antiviral. The flower is a good diaphoretic, which is going to help us sweat out that fever and make it more protective. The leaf is the strongest medicinally and should only be used in adults. The berry is immune stimulating and is a gentle laxative and is really safe for kids. The leaf is really, or excuse me, the flower is really safe for kids as well. The berry is used in making syrups and wine and juice and things like that. We want to make sure that when we use elder, that all the parts that we use are either dried first or cooked. That's going to help take away some of the mild toxicity that can give us a little bit of an upset stomach. There are no contraindications. It's even safe to use during pregnancy, although those with immune issues or autoimmune issues, you might want to just take it for a small period of time, maybe just to kick out the cold or the flu, and then stop taking it because it can produce more antibodies if you have some autoimmune issues. Okay, let's move on to elecampane. Elecampane is Inula helenium is the Latin name, and it got its name from the large amount of insoluble fiber, or that inulin, that is really beneficial. We are now learning from some new science that inulin is the prebiotic food that feeds that good bacteria. And we would want to take that in a capsule form And that would be really good to use to help us heal from a foodborne illness or even dysentery. It's a perennial and it's an excellent expectorant. It helps to clear the mucus out of the respiratory, the digestive, and the urinary systems. It's found in formulas that are used in really serious infections like pertussis. There are no contraindications, and the root is the medicine. So maybe let that plant go to seed and then dig up some of that root when you need it. All right, so fennel. Fennel is our next plant, Phoeniculum vulgare. It's an annual. It's a really great carminative. We can use this with catnip as a tea or glycerite for babies with colic, and it's really good for diarrhea. It helps to increase breast milk, which is really great for those nursing moms who need a little bit of assistance there. It's a really good antispasmodic. So it's used for intestinal as well as uterine cramping. It's great used with raspberry leaf and cramp bark for those problems. It's even really good for the spasming of bronchial tissue, which is maybe due to asthma. So it would be really good asthma formula or herb there. There are no contraindications, and the seed is the medicine. So anytime we have a seed as a medicine, we want to be able to grind that seed up to break up that outer shell on the seed that protects it. Okay, so let's talk about garlic. Allium sativum is a perennial. If it's not harvested, you can keep growing it if you don't harvest the bulbs. It's a great antimicrobial. It's an alternative herb, which means that it's going to help cleanse the blood. It's antimicrobial, it's antifungal, carminative, and it's hepatic, means that it's going to help flush out some things out of the liver. It's really good for the liver. It's a great respiratory herb, helps with respiratory infections. It can be used fresh to be placed directly on warts and covered up with a Band-Aid or maybe duct tape to help kill those warts. It'll turn them black and they'll fall off. There are no contraindications unless you're using blood thinners. Then you'll want to consult a doctor if using large amounts. It's a really good herb that helps with blood pressure as well. It's a really great herb. It's really good for earaches. So we'll be making a ear oil for earaches. The garlic ear oil can also be alternated with fresh grated onion, and that onion juice used as drops for earaches. So I like to alternate garlic and onion. And, you know, my kids haven't had to have antibiotics for earaches for years now. And we've found a lot of benefit using garlic mullein oil as well as fresh squeezed onion juice. All right, so let's talk about lavender, Lavandula officinalis. This is another one of those plants that are part of the mint family. It's a perennial, so it'll come back every year. It's usually a short-lived perennial. It'll live for maybe 5 to 10 years, and then you'll have to replant it. If you let it go to seed, you may find some babies pop up in your soil if you've got really nice soil. It's a relaxing nervine, so it's really good for anxiety and used in insomnia formulas. It's a great antiseptic and antimicrobial herb for cleansing wounds. I really like to use the essential oil with wounds. It just helps prevent any infections. It's antifungal. It's really great for tension headaches and some migraines. It's really good for burns as well as bee stings and bug bites. You'd want to use the essential oil for that. I've put the lavender essential oil in some water and just sprayed sunburns with that, and it's really cooling, really helpful for sunburns that are a little bit painful. There are no contraindications, and with the lavender, we want to use the flower bud just before the flower opens. That is the best medicine. All right, lemon balm, Melissa officinalis. Here's another official herb. It's a perennial. It's a very strong antiviral, specifically for the herpes virus when applied directly. So chickenpox, cold sores, shingles, those kinds of things. It helps to kill or at least stop the progression, the replication of that virus on contact. It's excellent for that. It's very calming for anxiety and eases depression. It's really good to help one go to sleep as well. And it's used with hawthorn berry and St. John's wort. It's excellent for depression caused by grief or loss. There are no contraindications to lemon balm. So marshmallow, Athea officinalis. This is a perennial and one of the best herbs. It's a very soothing demulcent herb, which means it contains a lot of mucilage. It helps to coat and heal inflamed tissue, which is kind of, mucilage is really this soothing kind of slimy substance. It's really soothing to tissues. It's great for the digestive tract, the respiratory tract, the urinary tract, all sorts of inflammation and soreness. It's included in kidney stone formulas to help soothe those inflamed, smooth tissues, to help someone pass that stone more easily. It's a great replacement for slippery elm. Slippery elm is one of those herbs that's actually endangered, and it does the exact same thing, and it's very easy to grow. It can also be used for people who are malnourished. It can actually keep them alive and help with absorption. So that malabsorption process that can help those people who can't absorb very well. It helps to enrich mother's milk, so it makes it a little bit more nourishing. It stops the progression of gangrene. So those wounds that are almost dead, they're not all the way dead yet, but almost dead, it'll help bring everything back to homeostasis, to that balance where it needs to be. There are no contraindications. The whole plant is the medicine, but the root contains the most amount of mucilage. It will reseed itself very well. So I have marshmallow growing everywhere, all over my yard, and where I don't want it, I'll just dig it up and use the whole plant. In the spring, when all the energy is in the root of the medicine. It's just one of those rock star herbs that I feel like everyone should have. The common mallow, as well as globe mallow and hollyhocks, are part of the mallow family, and they will do the same thing as well. They have the same medicinal value. I just feel like Athea officinalis is our better variety, because there's just so much of it there. It's really good for even skin conditions, help soothe the skin and things like that. So great herb, one that I think everyone should be growing. All right, milk thistle, Silybum marianum. This is an annual, and as you can see, there's lots of different kinds of thistles that grow, but this thistle has more milky veins, milky lines kind of going through them, and it's a wonderful herb. It is an annual, so once the flower produces, you want to look to see when the seeds are ready, and it'll kind of create this little puff like a dandelion when it goes to seed. It creates a little puff, and the seeds start to come out, and that's when you want to grab it, because you don't want to let that go to seed and have thistle everywhere. So the seed is the medicine. It protects the liver from toxic damage. There was a study done on mice where they had an experimental group and a controlled group, and they had, the control group they gave them milk thistle. And no, I'm sorry. They gave them, okay, so they gave the experimental group the milk thistle, and the control group, they didn't. I have that backwards. They gave the experimental group nothing, and the control group milk thistle. And the experimental group, they gave poisonous mushrooms. I think it was death cap mushrooms, and then they gave the second group death cap mushrooms. And the group that didn't get milk thistle just died. They died instantly. And the mice that ate the milk thistle first didn't even phase them. So that's how amazing the milk thistle protects the liver. It prevents liver cell death. It heals the liver from damage, actually, so it can actually regenerate liver tissue. It's one of those amazing liver restorative herbs. It helps the liver to produce glutathione, which is a really important antioxidant that helps our body to detox. Okay, so Tylenol, for example, lowers glutathione, and it actually can cause a lot of health problems. So I always tell people never ever use Tylenol if you can help it, because it's just going to prolong that illness. It's not going to allow our body to detox and do the job that it needs to do. It helps to purify blood as an alternative. It helps to cleanse the liver by producing more bile. So, I mean, this is like your rock star liver herb. And it also helps to increase mother's milk. Another one of those along with our fennel, right? Okay, oats. Avena sativa, it's a perennial. And we want to harvest our oats just before the grain ripens, when the tops produce a really milky substance. It's an excellent nervine, and it's really good for those who are going nonstop all the time, who are really stressed out. They're kind of burning the candle on both ends, so to speak. It's really good for those who are mentally and physically exhausted. So I like to add this to some formulas that help with stress and adrenal problems. It's really soothing to irritated skin. It's full of silica, and that silica can help us pull out heavy metals from the body and help remineralize our bones. There's no contraindications except for those maybe with gluten sensitivity. Then I'd say be cautious. Although if you're growing oats without wheat close by, then you should be okay if it's not cross-contaminating with the wheat. Okay, so let's talk about parsley, Petroselinum crispum. It's a biannual, and the leaves are a really good diuretic. They are full of vitamins and minerals and contain a lot of volatile oils and chlorophyll that helps with the normal function of kidneys. The root is good for breaking up kidney stones, and when used in large doses, it can actually help dry up a mother's milk, if that's what the mother wants. So we'd want to avoid using this during breastfeeding, of course, if we want to keep breastfeeding, right? Peppermint. Paprika mentha is a perennial. It's a great carminative herb to help with digestive issues like nausea and bloating. It's really good for headaches and fevers. It's also a good diaphoretic, so it's going to help us sweat out that fever. I like to use it with elder and yarrow to help kick out the cold and the flu. There are no contraindications. Sometimes it can be a little bit strong, too strong for some people, and maybe for some children. And then, if it causes heartburn in some people, then you would want to avoid it. Spearmint would be a nice option or alternative to peppermint because it's just a little bit more mild. So spearmint's usually used with children. Okay, rosemary. Rosmarinus officinalis. It's an annual or perennial depending on what variety or what climate you live in. I live in northern Utah, and so the ARP variety of rosemary has stayed alive during our winters. Sometimes they die, sometimes they stay alive. So it just depends if you can create a microclimate for them or not. It's a really good nervine for memory. and improving concentration. Really good for helping with headaches and mild depression. We would want to use it with ginkgo and gotu kola for our memory and concentration formulas. It's a good digestive aid, especially when eating high fatty foods and meats and things like that. There are no contraindications. Sage, Salvia officinalis, so another officinalis herb here. It's a perennial. It's another really good herb for memory, stress, and headaches, so we can use this with rosemary. It's a great herb for combating the cold and the flu. It's a good astringent for sore throats and diarrhea. It can be used for women who are going through night sweats, who are menopausal. It will help dry up mother's milk, so we'd want to avoid it while breastfeeding. We'd also want to avoid it during pregnancy as well. It's a good antiseptic herb for washing wounds. Okay. So the reason why we want to avoid it during pregnancy is because it affects the hormones, and that's how it helps with menopause. So anything that affects our hormones or affects the uterus, then we might want to avoid during pregnancy. Okay, St. John's wort. Hypericum perforatum is a perennial. It's excellent nervine for depression. There's lots of kinds of different varieties of St. John's wort. There's some really big, beautiful yellow flowered St. John's wort. That's not the medicine. That's not the one that you want to get. So this is another really important herb to specifically focus on that Latin name, Hypericum perforatum. It's an excellent nervine for depression, but it takes about 3 weeks for people to notice a difference. It's really good for insomnia as well as fear. It's especially good for nerve damage. Really great antiviral herb, especially for those who suffer from herpes viruses. We can apply that in a salve for those lesions to help with the pain from those lesions, maybe from shingles or things like that. It can help heal wounds and is really soothing to burns. I found that the salve that I make that contains St. John's wort really helps to heal up sunburns really well. It can help regulate digestion, and the only contraindication that would be applied here is that we would want to avoid using it with prescription antidepressants. It can interact with those. So we want to make sure that we use either one or the other, either St. John's wort or the prescription drug. Okay, thyme, Thymus vulgare is a wonderful perennial. Oh, I just want to go back to the St. John's wort. It's the flower that's the medicine, as well as the leaves. The flower bud actually contains more medicine than the flower itself. So when you go to pick the flowers, they'll leave your fingers kind of like a purple, dark purple color, and that's the medicine. I've infused St. John's wort oil, olive oil, with St. John's wort buds and flowers, and that oil turns into this beautiful ruby red color, and that's, you know, that medicine is in that oil, and it's just wonderful. Okay, so let's go back to thyme. It's a perennial. All the aerial parts are medicinal. It's a great antimicrobial. It will kill just about anything. I like to use it in my cleaners. So I'll add it to hydrogen peroxide and vinegar mixture, and that really helps to kill off just about everything. It's really good for the respiratory, urinary, and digestive tracts when it comes to infections. We want to make sure that we're eating fermented foods away from thyme because it's so strong that it can actually kill the good bacteria. So we want to replenish that bacteria. We want to eat lots of fiber to feed that bacteria as well. It's good used topically for bug bites and stings. It also has antifungal properties, so good in formulas for candida and athlete's foot and ringworm, things like that. It's a good digestive aid, and we can take this at any time we just want to avoid taking it in large doses during pregnancy. Although you still can if you're ill or something like that. We just don't want to take it for a long period of time. Okay, valerian. Valeriana officinalis. This is a perennial and is a strong nervine. The root is a medicine. Be warned because it does smell like stinky feet. The flower smells fabulous. It smells wonderful. In fact, it grows in our Utah mountains, in the wild, and it just smells wonderful. But the root is medicine, and it smells like stinky feet. It's not wonderful to smell, but it is really good for insomnia and even mild pain. I would use it with skullcap and chamomile for both of those conditions, for insomnia and for pain. It's not addictive, and it's not going to leave you feeling groggy at all. It may be contraindicated for those who find it irritating. It might make them feel worse. And so if it does, then you would just avoid using valerian. And those people could use skullcap or passion flower instead. Okay, so let's move on to our bonus herbs, the herbs that we would find in the wild, mostly in the upper northern hemisphere of the world here. Burdock, Arcticium lapa, is a biannual, so it's going to flower, seed, and die the second year. And so if we're harvesting the root, we want to harvest it in the fall of the first year or the spring of the second year before it goes to flower, seeds, and dies. It's a really good alternative, meaning it's going to help cleanse the blood. The root is good for cancer and skin conditions like psoriasis and eczema because it stimulates bile production and it helps to cleanse the liver so the liver can do its job. It doesn't have any specific chemicals that kill cancer or take care of eczema or things like that. It's just a really good hepatic herb in that it cleanses the liver, and then once the liver is healthy and strong, the liver can take on those other things that are going on in the body. And so anyone with eczema or psoriasis or any other skin conditions might want to consider cleansing their liver with burdock. Okay, the leaves are really good for healing infected wounds, and there are no contraindications. Okay, cleavers, Gallium aperine. This is an annual, and it's a really great lymphatic herb. It can be used internally as a tincture or tea, as well as a poultice placed over swollen lymph nodes or glands. And it's also a really good liver and kidney restorative herb, so it's going to help with those organs as well. There's no contraindications. All right, so dandelion, Taraxacum officinalis. Believe it or not, this is medicine. It's not the weed that you thought it was. It's a perennial, and the whole plant is edible. The leaves are full of vitamins and minerals, and they taste really good. They're part of the lettuce family, and they are a really good diuretic. There's a lot of drugs out there that help get rid of edema, but they don't contain potassium, and potassium we don't want to ever be depleted of potassium in our body, and so dandelion actually consists or contains, I should say, potassium, which is really important when we're using diuretics to help flush out kidneys or bladder infections. We could use it and combine it with nettles as a mineral tonic if we need more minerals in our diet. The flowers are a good anodyne used for pain. I like to add this with arnica for an arnica liniment or an arnica lotion for bruises and sprains and strains and things like that. The root is a really good cholagogue, which means it helps to stimulate bile production to cleanse the liver, just like our burdock and our milk thistle. All right, there are no contraindications to dandelion. It's perfectly safe for anyone at any time to use. Gumweed, Grindelia species. You may have seen this weed around. It is fabulous, one of the best herbs in my opinion. It is a biannual or a short-lived perennial. The sticky flower just before it opens is the medicine, and it is an excellent antibiotic, antispasmodic, and expectorant. So this is a rock star herb for asthma because it's going to kill any bacteria. It's going to help relax all the tight muscles that are closing out the airway, and it's an expectorant. It's going to help bring out all that extra mucus. It's really good for pneumonia. It would be a great one for even pertussis. It's a good vulnerary herb, so it's going to help accelerate wound healing. And it's really good for applying to poison ivy rashes. It blooms about the end of July, first part of August is when you'd want to harvest those. You don't want to use it in people with kidney or heart disease. Okay, so let's move on to mullein, Verbascum thapsus. It's a biannual, and the leaves are used for respiratory problems. It's a mildly sedating to the nerves, so it's going to calm a lot of our coughs, and it's a gentle expectorant, so it's good for respiratory infections. The flower is the strongest part of the plant medicinally, and it's considered an anodyne, which is really good for pain. It contains antimicrobial properties, making this a really great herb to infuse in oil for earache. So we would use mullein and garlic and infuse them in some olive oil, and that would be really great for warding off earaches and alternating that with maybe some onion juice like we talked about earlier. So the root is typically used for back pain and inflammation. People have found a lot of success with that. The seeds are really toxic, so don't use the seeds. Other than that, there are no other contraindications. Okay, nettles. Nettles, Urtica dioica is a perennial, and it's really rich in minerals and vitamins. The nettles make a really nice overall whole body tonic. They're really good for anemia, so those people who have low blood pressure or weakness there with the blood. They're also really good for excreting uric acid out of the joints, easing pain, and those with arthritis and gout. So it's a really nice herb to use. We can use it with red raspberry leaf and alfalfa if you're not allergic to the alfalfa for really good vitamin supplement replacement. So, use raspberry leaf, alfalfa, and nettles instead of an inexpensive multivitamin. There are no contraindications, although you'll want to wear gloves when harvesting them so the stings don't get to you. But once the plant dries, the stings don't affect you anymore. That formic acid is dried up and it's no longer there. The seed also is a great kidney restorative. It's really good for the adrenals. So it's another one of those really good adaptogenic herbs that help with stress and those kind of situations. Excellent plant. I grow it. You want to harvest the greens in the spring. Just harvest the top parts and it'll grow up again and produce seed. Don't harvest the plants when they've gone to seed because they can be a little bit, the leaf can be a little bit irritating sometimes to people, to their digestive tract. So just to harvest in the spring there and then harvest the seed as they come on in strands and they're still green and plump. Don't harvest them after they've gone brown and ripened. Okay, so let's move on to Oregon grape, Mahonia repens. It's a perennial. It grows natively in our Utah mountains. The root is the medicine, and it contains a chemical called berberine. It's a really nice antibiotic herb, and it's a really good substitute for the endangered golden seal that grows back east in the shade. It helps to cleanse the liver as it increases bile production, and it should not be used during pregnancy. That would be the only contraindication. Plantain, Plantago species. is a perennial, and if you let it go to seed, it will grow everywhere. So cut those seed heads off if you don't want them growing everywhere. The leaf is the medicine. It's known as a superfood because it contains all of the necessary nutrients that we need to survive on. It's a really good vulnerary herb with mild antibiotic properties to help heal puncture wounds so they don't close up too fast. So comfrey is really good for closing up those big wounds. But if we were to have a puncture wound, we wouldn't want to use comfrey because it would close up our wounds too quickly. Where plantain is better at that. It still has some antibiotic and vulnerary properties to it, where it's slowly going to close it up and keep it, maintain an infection, keep the infection at bay. So that would be a really good one to use. It's really healing to the digestive tissue, like leaky gut and ulcers. It's used with gumweed for respiratory infections and excessive mucus. It draws out poison and toxins from wounds, like we talked about, from those poisonous spider or snake bites. And there are no contraindications here. It's a really safe herb to take. All right, rose. The rosa species. Roses grow wild all over the place here in Utah. It's perennial. The flower is medicine. The rose hips are a really nice source of vitamin C. We can use that with pine needles. Pine needles are also a really nice source of vitamin C as well. We could just throw that into some, water we just boiled and make a tea out of it and drink that. The rose, or any of the rose family plants, are really good astringents that help to tone and dry and pucker up inflamed tissue. For example, like sore throats and diarrhea and things like that. Rose is a good addition to formulas for the heart as well. So we would want to use that with hawthorn and lemon balm to help with grief and loss and things like that. There's no contraindications to rose. I like to use rose on my skin to help bring my skin back to its normal pH balance, so it's not overproducing too many oils. So it's really nice to use there as well. Yarrow. So yarrow is our last and final herb that we're going to talk about. Achillea millefolium. Millefolium refers to a million little leaves, and there's lots of little leaves on our yarrow plant. It's a perennial, and the leaf and the flower are the medicine. It's especially strong when it's harvested after 3 weeks of drought. So if you were to go up in the mountains in July, about this time, the yarrow just smells really pungent and strong. You can tell that there's a lot of medicine in that yarrow. It's a really great diaphoretic to help one break a fever. So you would want to drink the tea and wrap up in a blanket and sweat out that fever. It has a lot of really great antibiotic properties to help fight infection. So I like to use it in my cold and flu formulas. I like to use it in my salve formulas to help prevent any infections from any particular wounds. It stops bleeding internally and externally. And when it's used with shepherd's purse, it's a really great herb for hemorrhaging, for women who are hemorrhaging after they've had a baby. And then, of course, if we have a wound, we'd want to use that, the yarrow in a powdered form to stop the bleeding. It also helps to cleanse the liver of hormones, easing PMS symptoms. So it's going to help that liver kind of cleanse out those hormones. So it's a great hepatic herb as well. This is one you would not want to use during pregnancy, obviously, because it affects the uterus. Okay, so that's it for this module. We went over about 35 herbs that cover a really broad range of plants. And if you have any questions and you want to learn more about certain plants, you can visit my website at organicemily.com. I look forward to seeing you next time, where we're going to start making medicine with what we've learned. So we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.